The light comes slowly through my living room window, that pale gray of 6 in the morning when the world hasn't quite decided if it wants to wake up yet. I'm sitting on my couch with a cup of coffee going cold in my hands, watching dust particles drift through the air like they have all the time in the world. This is my favorite hour, the one where I don't have to be anyone yet. My phone buzzes against the cushion beside me. For a moment, I consider ignoring it. In my experience, nothing good comes from messages sent at dawn. But I reach for it anyway, the way you touch a bruise to see if it still hurts. The name on the screen makes my chest tighten. Desmond. Hey, random question. What does it feel like to be pinned against the wall? I stare at the words until they blur slightly. Read them again. The coffee mug trembles in my other hand, and I set it down on the table with more care than necessary. My cat Elliot watches me from his perch on the bookshelf, green eyes unblinking, as if he knows something has shifted in the air. This isn't the first message like this. Over the years, Desmond has sent me things that hovered just on the edge of something I can't name. Questions about intimacy couched as curiosity. Confessions disguised as casual observations. Always followed by silence, as if the words had escaped without his permission. But this one feels different. More direct. More dangerous. I close my eyes and I'm 22 again, standing in someone's cramped apartment that smells like beer and cheap cologne. The music is too loud and everyone is laughing at something I missed. Desmond appears beside me like he always did back then, magnetic and warm and taking up more space than his body should allow. We're playing some ridiculous drinking game, the kind where the rules change every 5 minutes and nobody really cares about winning. He puts his hands on my shoulders to steady himself, laughing at something someone said. But his grip lingers. His thumbs press against my collarbone through my shirt, and when I look up at him, his eyes are focused on my face with an intensity that makes my stomach drop. The laughter around us fades to white noise. For 3 heartbeats, maybe 4, we just look at each other like we're seeing something we've been pretending not to notice. Then someone bumps into us, and the moment shatters. Desmond steps back, grinning that easy smile he wears like armor, and the party swallows us again. But I can still feel the shape of his hands on my shoulders hours later, lying in my narrow dorm bed, staring at the ceiling. I open my eyes. The morning light has shifted, grown stronger. My coffee is definitely cold now. I pick up my phone and start typing. Delete it. Start again. My fingers know what they want to say, but my mind keeps stopping them. What does it feel like? It feels like drowning in shallow water. It feels like wanting something so badly, you convince yourself you don't want it at all. It feels like 15 years of careful distance that could collapse with a single honest word. I type. It depends who's doing the pinning. Delete it. I type. Why are you asking? Delete it. I type. I've been wondering the same thing. Delete it. Instead, I set the phone down and walk to the kitchen. I pour the cold coffee down the sink and start a fresh pot, even though my hands are shaking slightly and I probably don't need the caffeine. Through the window above the sink, I can see the ocean in the distance, gray and restless under the early sky. Desmond has always been married, always had his life arranged in neat compartments labeled family and work and friendship, with me filed safely under the last one. He sends me pictures of his children's birthday parties and Christmas mornings, asks my advice about anniversary gifts for Fiona. We maintain the careful choreography of 2 people who have agreed never to name what lives in the space between us. But this message feels like a crack in that agreement. Like he's finally asking the question we've both been avoiding for 15 years. Not what does it feel like to be with a man, but what does it feel like to want something you can't have? What does it feel like to be pressed against a wall by desire and circumstance and the terrible weight of all the words you've never said? I pour my coffee and return to the couch. My phone sits where I left it, screen dark and innocent. Elliot has moved to the window, tail twitching as he watches birds I can't see. I pick up the phone one more time. This time, I don't type anything. I just hold it, feeling its weight, thinking about how strange it is that something so small can carry so much potential for destruction. Or maybe revelation. Maybe they're the same thing. The cursor blinks patiently in the empty message field, waiting for me to decide what kind of man I want to be today. The careful one who has spent years building a life around what he doesn't say. Or the brave one who might finally answer a question that could change everything. I set the phone down again, but I don't delete his message. Not yet. Something has shifted between us, and we both know it. Not because I didn't already understand what I felt. I've carried that knowledge like a stone in my chest for 15 years. But because for the first time, Desmond might actually want to know the answer. And that terrifies me more than all the years of silence ever did. By 8 o'clock, I've showered and dressed and eaten breakfast standing at the kitchen counter, the way I do every morning. My townhouse is small and deliberate, filled with the kind of careful quiet that comes from living alone for years. Books line every wall, stacked in the methodical way of someone who has read each one and remembers where every story lives. Elliot follows me from room to room as I gather my things for work, his presence a comfortable constant in the rhythm of my days. I teach high school literature at Millfield Academy, a brick building that sits on a hill overlooking the harbor. My students call me Mr. Chun, and I've been shaping their understanding of Gatsby and Hamlet and Morrison for the past 12 years. It's good work, honest work. The kind that fills your days with purpose without demanding too much of your soul. My mother calls it settling. During our monthly phone conversations, she asks when I'm going to find someone steady, when I'm going to give her grandchildren, when I'm going to start living instead of just existing. I tell her I'm happy, which isn't entirely true but isn't entirely false either. Happiness feels like too big a word for what I've built here. Contentment, maybe. Peace. I've dated, of course. Quiet dinners with men I meet through friends or online. Coffee conversations that stretch into pleasant evenings, sometimes into pleasant months. But nothing that sticks. Nothing that feels worth rearranging my carefully constructed life around. My last relationship ended 2 years ago when David, a marine biologist from the next town over, told me I was the most emotionally unavailable person he'd ever met. He wasn't wrong. The truth is, I designed this life to be small. Small enough that it couldn't disappoint me. Small enough that I could control every variable, predict every outcome. My evening walks along the dunes, my weekend trips to the bookstore in town, my Friday night grading sessions with a glass of wine and Miles Davis playing softly in the background. It's a life measured in small pleasures and careful distances. But Desmond has always been the exception to that careful distance. He calls me when his marriage is cracking, which happens every few years like a geological event. The pattern is always the same. Things get tense at home. Fiona starts making pointed comments about his late nights at the office, and suddenly my phone rings at 11 at night with Desmond's voice on the other end, raw and needing something I can never quite name. I've seen the pictures on social media. The family portraits on Christmas morning, everyone in matching sweaters and perfect smiles. Desmond with his arm around Fiona at charity galas, both of them tanned and laughing at something just outside the frame. The children's soccer games and school plays, Desmond cheering from the sidelines like the devoted father he probably is most of the time. It looks like happiness from the outside. But I know the weight in his voice during those late-night calls, the way he says my name like it's an anchor in rough seas. He tells me about feeling trapped, about going through the motions, about wondering if this is all there is. And I listen, because listening is what I do. It's what I've always done for him. The last time we saw each other in person was 18 months ago. An education conference in Portland where we were both presenting. We ended up in the hotel bar until 2 in the morning, talking about everything except what we were really talking about. He told me about his oldest daughter starting to ask questions about college, about Fiona's new business venture, about the house renovations that were taking forever and costing twice what they'd budgeted. I told him about my promotion to department head, about the novel I was trying to write on weekends, about Elliot's ongoing war with the neighbor's cat. Normal things. Safe things. But there were moments when the conversation would pause, when we'd just look at each other across the small table, and I could feel the weight of everything we weren't saying. His hand rested on the table between us, close enough that I could have reached out and touched it. I didn't. I never do. When we said goodbye the next morning in the hotel lobby, he hugged me longer than necessary. His cologne lingered on my jacket for the entire flight home, and I didn't wash it for a week. That's the shape of our friendship. Always almost something else. Always dancing around the edges of a conversation we're both too afraid to have. I've spent 15 years wondering if he knows what he does to me. If the way he touches my shoulder when he laughs is deliberate or unconscious. If those long silences are loaded with the same weight I feel. Or if I'm imagining connections that exist only in my own carefully guarded heart. Sometimes I think he knows exactly what he's doing. That I'm his safe harbor, the place he can go to touch something real without having to name it or claim it or change his life for it. Other times I wonder if I'm just projecting my own feelings onto innocent gestures, reading romance into what is simply friendship. But this morning's message feels different. It cuts through the careful ambiguity we've maintained for so long and asks something direct. Something dangerous. I'm standing in my classroom now, writing today's discussion questions on the whiteboard. The students will be arriving soon, filling the empty desks with their energy and opinions about whether Gatsby's dream was doomed from the start or if he simply loved the wrong person. It's a question I've been asking myself for years, in different forms. My phone sits silent in my desk drawer, Desmond's message still unanswered. But I can feel it there, waiting. A small bomb that could detonate the careful life I've spent years constructing. The first bell rings, and students begin filtering into the classroom. I smile and greet them the way I always do, sliding back into the comfortable role of Mr. Chun, the literature teacher who helps them understand the complexities of the human heart through the safety of fictional characters. But part of me is still sitting on my couch in the early morning light, holding a phone that contains a question I don't know how to answer. Part of me is still 22 years old, feeling Desmond's hands on my shoulders and wondering what would happen if I stopped pretending I didn't want more than friendship. Part of me is still wondering if this time, finally, he might be asking because he wants to know. 3 days pass before his next message arrives. I'm grading papers at my kitchen table when my phone lights up, and I know it's him before I even look. There's something about the timing of Desmond's communications, the way they always find me when I'm settled into the rhythm of ordinary life. Coming to town next weekend. You around? I stare at the message for a long time. Around. Such a casual word for something that feels anything but casual. My fingers hover over the keyboard, and I realize I'm holding my breath. The smart thing would be to say no, to claim I have plans, or that the timing isn't good, or any of the dozen polite excuses I've perfected over the years. Instead, I type, yes, you can stay here if you want. His response comes immediately, as if he was waiting. Perfect. See you Friday. That's it. No explanation of why he's coming, no mention of the message that started this. Just the promise of his presence. And suddenly my carefully ordered world feels precarious. I spend the week preparing in ways that feel both necessary and ridiculous. I change the sheets in the guest room twice, vacuum the already clean floors, buy groceries I don't normally keep in the house. Wine that costs more than my usual bottle. Coffee that isn't instant. Fresh flowers for the table, which Elliot regards with deep suspicion. On Thursday night, I find myself standing in the guest room doorway, holding a fresh towel. My hands are shaking slightly as I fold it and place it on the bed. It's just a towel, just a room, just a friend coming to visit. I tell myself these things, but my body knows better. Friday evening arrives with the kind of crisp clarity that only comes in early autumn. The light is golden and slanted, painting everything in warm tones that make my small house look like something from a magazine. I've opened the windows to let the sea air drift through, and I'm standing in the kitchen when I hear his car in the driveway. My heart does something complicated in my chest. Desmond looks exactly like himself when I open the door, which shouldn't surprise me, but somehow does. Tall and broad-shouldered, wearing jeans and a gray sweater that brings out his eyes. He's carrying a leather weekend bag, and that easy smile I remember from college. The one that made professors forget to call on other students and made strangers offer to buy him drinks. Nathaniel, he says, and steps forward to hug me. His arms come around me with casual confidence, and I smell his cologne, something woody and expensive that probably costs more than I spend on clothes in a month. The hug lasts a beat longer than friendly, and when he pulls back, his hand lingers on my shoulder. You look good, he tells me, and his eyes do this thing where they take inventory of my face like he's checking to see what's changed. Peaceful. This place suits you. I invite him in and watch him take in my space with the kind of attention that feels both flattering and invasive. He comments on my books, my furniture, the way the light falls through the living room windows. Everything is so you, he says, trailing his fingers along the spine of a volume of poetry on the coffee table. Minimalist. Thoughtful. There's something in his tone I can't quite identify. Not criticism, exactly, but not entirely admiration either. We settle on the back patio with a bottle of wine as the sun begins to set. The ocean is visible in the distance, a thin line of silver between the dunes and the sky. Desmond sprawls in his chair with the kind of casual confidence that takes up space, his legs stretched out, his wine glass resting on his stomach. The conversation starts safe. His work, my work, mutual friends from college whose names we drop like breadcrumbs leading back to safer times. But as the wine disappears and the light fades, something shifts. The careful distance we usually maintain begins to collapse. He talks about feeling trapped, about going through the motions of a life that looks perfect from the outside but feels hollow from within. About wondering what would have happened if he'd made different choices, been braver, been more honest about what he wanted. I listen the way I always do, but there's something different in how he's speaking. More direct, more urgent, like he's finally saying things he's been rehearsing for years. The question comes just as the first stars appear in the darkening sky. Seriously, he says, leaning forward in his chair, his eyes fixed on my face with an intensity that makes my throat tighten. What does it feel like? To want a man. To be with one. The words hang in the air between us, heavier than the gathering darkness. I set my wine glass down carefully, buying time, feeling the weight of his attention like a physical thing. I could deflect, could make a joke or change the subject or pretend I don't understand what he's really asking. Instead, I find myself speaking honestly for perhaps the first time in our 15-year friendship. It feels like drowning and breathing at the same time, I tell him. Like wanting something so badly, you convince yourself you don't want it at all. Like carrying a secret that weighs nothing and everything, depending on the day. He doesn't speak, just watches me with that unsettling focus, and I realize I've said too much and not enough all at once. It feels like this, I want to say. Like sitting across from you pretending this is just friendship while my heart breaks a little every time you touch me. Like 15 years of almosts and what-ifs and careful distances that I maintain because the alternative feels too dangerous to survive. But I don't say that. Instead, I reach for my wine glass and ask him why he's asking. He's quiet for so long I start to think he won't answer. When he finally speaks, his voice is rougher than usual. Because I think I might know, he says. And I don't know what to do with that. We go to bed in separate rooms that night. Him in the guest room and me in my own bed with Elliot curled against my side. But I don't sleep. I lie awake listening to the old house settle around us, acutely aware of Desmond's presence down the hall. Knowing he's there, in my space, breathing the same air. The conversation replays in my mind, every word in pause and look dissected until it loses all meaning and then finds it again. He asked the question out loud this time, not hidden in a text message but spoken in the golden light of evening, with wine and honesty and something that felt like courage. And I answered, not completely, not with the raw truth that lives in the deepest part of my chest, but more honestly than I've ever spoken to him before. I think about getting up, walking down the hall, standing outside his door. I think about what I would say, what he might say back, what might happen in the space between question and answer. But I don't move, because some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. And I'm not sure either of us is ready for what lives on the other side. Morning comes soft and gray, filtering through my bedroom curtains like a whispered promise. I wake to the sound of movement in the kitchen, the familiar rhythm of someone making coffee who isn't me. For a moment, I lie still and listen to Desmond navigating my space, opening cabinets, running water, existing in my morning routine like he belongs there. When I finally emerge, he's standing at the stove in jeans and a t-shirt, his hair still messed from sleep. He's found the good coffee, the one I keep hidden behind the everyday blend, and the smell fills the kitchen like an offering. Sleep well? He asks without turning around, but there's something in his voice that suggests he knows the answer. Eventually, I tell him, which is true enough. We cook breakfast together in a dance that feels both new and ancient. He finds things without asking where they are, hands me utensils before I reach for them, moves around me in the narrow space with an awareness that makes my skin electric. When he reaches past me for the salt, his chest brushes against my back, and the contact lasts a beat too long to be accidental. After breakfast, we walk down to the water. The beach is nearly empty except for a few runners and an old man with a metal detector. The sand is cool under our feet, and the ocean stretches gray and endless toward the horizon. We walk in comfortable silence at first, but gradually the space between us shrinks until our shoulders bump with each step. Desmond stops suddenly and picks up a piece of sea glass, green and smooth from years in the surf. He holds it up to the light, examining it like it contains secrets. "You know what I love about these?" he says. "How something broken becomes beautiful. How the rough edges get worn away until what's left is perfect." He hands it to me, and when our fingers brush, neither of us pulls away immediately. The glass is warm from his palm, and I close my fist around it. We continue walking, and the conversation turns deeper. He talks about his children, about watching them discover who they are and wondering if he ever really knew himself at their age. About the decisions he made because they seemed safe, responsible, expected. About the growing distance between who he is and who he thought he would become. I find myself sharing things I rarely speak aloud. About the small satisfactions of my carefully constructed life, but also about the loneliness that lives in its corners. About watching my students fall in love and wondering if I'm brave enough to let myself want something that could destroy me. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd kissed that night?" he asks suddenly, stopping in the sand. The question hangs between us like a challenge. I know exactly which night he means, though we've never spoken of it before. The party, his hands on my shoulders, that moment when the world narrowed to just the space between our faces. I don't answer, but he reads something in my silence. "I think about it," he continues, "more than I should." We turn back toward the house without speaking, but something has shifted. The air feels charged, dangerous. Every casual touch as we rinse sand from our feet, every shared glance, carries weight it didn't have before. That evening, we settle on the couch to watch a movie neither of us really cares about. Some thriller with complicated plot twists that can't hold my attention because I'm too aware of Desmond beside me, the warmth radiating from his body, the way he sprawls across the cushions like he owns the space. Halfway through, exhaustion catches up with me. The wine from last night, the emotional weight of the day, the strange comfort of having him here, all combine to pull me under. I don't mean to fall asleep, but my eyes drift closed and I sink into the soft darkness of almost dreams. I wake to find him watching me, his face closer than it should be. The movie is still playing, but the volume is lower, and the only light comes from the television screen casting blue shadows across his features. "You look peaceful," he says quietly, and there's something in his voice I've never heard before. Something raw and unguarded. I don't move, don't sit up or create distance. Instead, I stay curled on my side, looking at him through half-closed eyes, feeling like I'm balanced on the edge of something vast and terrifying. The space between us feels alive, electric with possibility. I can see the exact moment when his gaze drops to my mouth, then back to my eyes. Can feel the question he's not asking, the answer I'm not giving. We stay like that for what feels like hours, but is probably only minutes, caught in the tension between wanting and having, between the safety of friendship and the danger of something more. Finally, he leans back, puts distance between us, but the air still hums with everything we didn't do. Later, as we're turning off lights and heading to our separate rooms, he stops at the bottom of the stairs. "Nathaniel," he says, and waits until I turn to face him. "Do you ever think you made the wrong choices?" The question is so direct, so loaded with implication, that it takes my breath away. I look at him standing there in my hallway. This man I've loved quietly for 15 years, and I realize there's no safe answer. Every day, I tell him, and the honesty of it feels like stepping off a cliff. He nods once, like I've confirmed something he already knew. Then he climbs the stairs to the guest room, leaving me standing alone in the darkness, my heart beating so hard I can hear it in my ears. I know something has changed between us, something fundamental and irreversible. We're no longer pretending this is just friendship, no longer hiding behind careful distances and unspoken rules. Tomorrow he'll leave, go back to his life, his family, his carefully constructed normalcy. But tonight, we've admitted we've been making the wrong choices. Tonight, we've looked directly at the thing we've been dancing around for 15 years. And I don't know what happens next. I don't sleep that night. I lie in my bed listening to the house breathe around us, hyper-aware of every creak and settle, every sound that might be Desmond moving in the room down the hall. The conversation replays in my mind until the words lose all meaning. Every day, the admission hangs between us like a bridge neither of us knows how to cross. Around 2 in the morning, I hear his door open. Footsteps in the hallway, soft and hesitant. They pause outside my room, and I hold my breath, wondering if he can hear my heart beating through the walls. The footsteps continue toward the bathroom, and I exhale slowly into my pillow. When he comes back, the footsteps pause again, longer this time. I imagine him standing there in the darkness, his hand maybe reaching for my door handle, maybe pulling back. The silence stretches until it becomes unbearable, and then I hear his door close again with the softest click. Morning arrives reluctantly, gray and subdued. I find Desmond in the kitchen already showered and dressed, making coffee with the mechanical precision of someone who didn't sleep either. He doesn't meet my eyes when he hands me a mug. We move around each other carefully, like we're made of something fragile that might shatter with too much contact. The easy intimacy of yesterday is gone, replaced by a tension that makes the air feel thick and hard to breathe. I make eggs while he butters toast, and we eat standing at the counter because sitting at the table feels too deliberate, too much like we're having a meal together instead of just existing in the same space by accident. He mentions needing to leave by noon to beat traffic. I nod and tell him that makes sense. We discuss his route home like we're strangers making polite conversation, carefully avoiding anything that might lead us back to dangerous territory. But the careful distance can't hold. By mid-morning, we're cleaning up from breakfast, moving in that same unconscious dance we'd found the day before. When we reach for the same dish towel, our hands brush, and neither of us pulls away immediately. The contact burns like a question mark against my skin. The moment builds slowly, inevitably. We're standing close enough that I can smell his cologne, can see the exact shade of brown in his eyes. Close enough that when he turns to face me fully, there's barely a foot of space between us. The kitchen falls away. The carefully constructed boundaries of 15 years fall away. There's nothing left but the two of us and the weight of everything we've never said. He reaches up slowly, so slowly I could stop him if I wanted to, and touches my face. His thumb traces along my cheekbone with the kind of reverence usually reserved for holy things. His eyes search mine, looking for permission or prohibition, and I give him neither. I just stand there, trembling slightly, letting him map the geography of my face like he's memorizing it. "We should talk about this," he says quietly, but he doesn't move his hand. "Yes," I whisper back, but I don't step away either. Instead, I find myself reaching up to cover his hand with mine, pressing his palm more firmly against my cheek. The contact is electric, dangerous, everything I've wanted and feared for 15 years distilled into the simple pressure of skin against skin. The spell breaks when his phone buzzes on the counter. A text message, probably from Fiona, pulling him back to the reality of his other life. He steps back, his hand falling away from my face, and the absence feels like a physical wound. "I should pack," he says, but he doesn't move. Yes, I agree, but I don't move either. We stand there for another moment, caught between what we want and what we should do, between the safety of the past and the terrifying possibility of a different future. Finally, he does step away, and I let him go. But something has broken open between us, some carefully maintained wall that kept us safely in the territory of friendship. As he heads upstairs to gather his things, I touch my cheek where his hand was and know there's no going back from this. 20 minutes later, I'm standing in my bedroom doorway when he appears in the hallway, bag in hand. He's moving toward the stairs when he stops, turns back to look at me. The distance between us feels both infinite and paper thin. "Nathaniel," he says, and my name sounds different in his voice. Raw, desperate. I don't answer, but I don't look away either. He sets his bag down and takes a step toward me. Then another. I stay perfectly still, barely breathing, as he closes the distance between us. When he's close enough that I can feel the warmth radiating from his body, he stops. We're at the threshold of my bedroom, caught between the public space of the hallway and the private intimacy of where I sleep. The symbolism isn't lost on either of us. "Tell me to stop," he whispers, leaning closer until his forehead almost touches mine. The words hang in the air between us, a last chance to maintain the careful fiction we've built our friendship on. A last chance to step back from the edge we've been approaching for 15 years. I don't tell him to stop. Instead, I close the distance between us and press my lips to his. The kiss is tentative at first, uncertain, like we're both afraid of breaking something precious. His lips are soft and warm, and he tastes like coffee and possibility. For a moment, we're both perfectly still, just breathing against each other, letting the reality of contact settle between us. Then something shifts. His hands come up to frame my face, and the kiss deepens, becomes urgent, desperate. 15 years of careful distance collapse into this single point of connection. I can feel him trembling, can taste something like tears, or maybe that's just the salt of my own. When we finally break apart, we're both breathing hard. His hands are still on my face, his thumb stroking across my cheekbone in a gesture so tender it makes my chest ache. We don't speak. There aren't words for what just happened, for the way the entire foundation of our relationship just shifted beneath our feet. After a moment that feels both eternal and far too brief, he steps back. His hands fall away from my face, and I feel the absence like a physical cold. He picks up his bag without looking at me and walks toward the stairs. I stand frozen in my doorway, listening to his footsteps descend, listening to him gather the rest of his things from the living room. The front door opens and closes with a finality that echoes through the house. I don't move for a long time. I just stand there in the threshold between my bedroom and the hallway, touching my lips, trying to process what just happened and what it means. Later, when I finally venture into the guest room to strip the bed, I find a piece of paper tucked into the drawer of the nightstand. His handwriting, hasty and uneven. I wanted it. I still don't know what that means. "I'm sorry." I read the note 3 times before folding it carefully and slipping it between the pages of the book on my nightstand. Then I sit on the edge of the stripped bed and let myself cry for everything we've lost and everything we might never have. The weeks that follow pass like a fever dream. I move through my daily routines like a ghost inhabiting my own life, teaching classes and grading papers and making dinner for one, but nothing feels real. Every object in my house carries the memory of his presence. The coffee mug he used sits in my cabinet like an accusation. The guest towel, laundered and folded, still seems to hold the shape of his hands. I delete his contact from my phone on a Tuesday night after 3 glasses of wine and too much silence. Then I restore it on Wednesday morning, staring at his name like it contains answers to questions I'm afraid to ask. The note stays hidden between the pages of my bedside book, but I know exactly where it is. Sometimes I take it out and read it again, searching for meaning in his hasty handwriting. I wanted it. I still don't know what that means. I'm sorry. I want to be angry with him for the sorry. Want to rage against the implication that what happened between us was a mistake, something to apologize for. But I understand the sorry isn't for wanting. It's for having to want something that doesn't fit into the careful architecture of his life. 3 weeks after he left, my phone buzzes with a message that makes my hands shake. "I need to see you." I stare at the words until they blur. Need. Not want, not would like to. Need, like breathing, like water, like something essential for survival. I type and delete a dozen responses before settling on something simple. When? His reply comes immediately. "This weekend. I found a place." halfway between us. The place turns out to be a cabin rental in the woods, 2 hours from my house and 2 hours from his. When I pull into the gravel driveway, his car is already there, and I sit for a moment gathering the courage to walk to the door. He opens it before I can knock, like he was watching for me. He looks terrible, beautiful and terrible, with dark circles under his eyes and the kind of haunted expression that comes from too many sleepless nights. We don't hug, don't touch, just stand there looking at each other like survivors of the same shipwreck. "Come in," he says, stepping back to let me pass. The cabin is small and rustic, all wood and windows and the kind of studied simplicity that comes with an expensive rental. There's a fire crackling in the stone fireplace and wine already open on the kitchen counter. He's clearly been here for a while, settling into the space, making it ready for whatever conversation we're about to have. This time, he speaks first. "I don't know who I am," he says without preamble, standing across the room like distance might protect us both from the weight of his words. "I just know I can't stop thinking about you." The admission hangs between us, raw and honest in a way that makes my chest tight. I want to respond, to offer comfort or absolution or something, but he's not finished. "I've spent 15 years telling myself this was friendship," he continues. "That what I felt for you is just affection, admiration. But after last weekend, after kissing you, I can't pretend anymore." He moves closer as he speaks, and I can see the exhaustion etched in the lines around his eyes, the weight of whatever internal battle he's been fighting since he left my house. "I think I've been lying to myself for so long I forgot what the truth felt like," he says. "Until you." When he reaches for me this time, there's no hesitation. His hands frame my face the way they did in my kitchen, but now there's urgency behind the tenderness. Desperation. The kiss is different from the one at my house. Hungrier. More honest. There's no careful distance to maintain, no other life waiting outside the door. Just the two of us and the weight of everything we've never allowed ourselves to feel. We don't make it to the bedroom. We barely make it to the couch, sinking into the cushions in a tangle of desperate hands and whispered names. It's not romantic, not the soft focus fantasy I've imagined in my quieter moments. It's raw and urgent and aching. 15 years of want compressed into touch and breath, and the salt taste of tears I'm not sure belong to him or me. When it's over, we lie pressed together on the narrow couch, breathing hard, not speaking. The fire pops and settles in the grate, and somewhere outside an owl calls through the darkness. That's when he cries, not from regret or shame, but from something deeper. Recognition, maybe. The kind of tears that come when you finally see yourself clearly after years of looking away. I hold him while he breaks apart, stroking his hair, whispering things that don't matter into the silence. We move to the bed eventually, curling together under the heavy quilt like we're trying to disappear into each other. But morning comes anyway, the way it always does, bringing reality back through the windows in pale, unforgiving light. I wake first and watch him sleep, memorizing the curve of his shoulder, the way his hair falls across his forehead. In sleep, he looks younger, softer, like the boy I met in college before life taught us both to be careful with our hearts. When he wakes, the weight of our situation settles between us immediately. We're not 20 anymore. This isn't a college experiment that we can laugh about later. We're both too old for the luxury of pretending consequences don't exist. What happens now? I ask, because someone has to. He's quiet for so long I start to think he won't answer. When he finally speaks, his voice is rough with exhaustion and something that might be grief. "I can't leave my kids," he says, "but I can't lie to myself anymore either. It's not a promise. It's not enough. But it's the truth, and somehow that matters more than easy answers or clean endings. We both know this isn't sustainable. Whatever this is between us, it exists in stolen moments and rented cabins, in the spaces between his real life and mine. It's not fair to anyone, least of all to us. But as we lie there in the morning light, his hand tracing absent patterns on my chest, I realize that sometimes love isn't about what's fair or practical or sustainable. Sometimes it's just about seeing someone clearly and choosing to love them anyway, even when love looks nothing like what you thought it would. even when it means accepting that wanting someone and having them are two different things entirely. 3 months pass like seasons changing, slow and inevitable. I return to the rhythm of my small life. But something fundamental has shifted. The same routines that once felt like careful containment now feel like choice. I teach my classes, grade papers, take evening walks along the dunes, but I do these things as someone who has been seen completely and survived it. The guest room remains exactly as I left it after his visit. Clean sheets, fresh towel, window open to let the sea air drift through. Not because I'm waiting for him to return, but because changing it feels like erasing something important. A reminder that love happened here, messy and complicated and real. Elliot has forgiven me for the disruption to our routine, though he still sometimes sits in the guest room doorway, as if wondering where the interesting visitor went. I find him there on a Tuesday afternoon when I come home from school, green eyes contemplative, tail twitching with whatever thoughts cats have about the mysteries of human behavior. I'm making dinner when the letter arrives, slipped through the mail slot to land on my front hall floor with the soft whisper of paper against wood. I know it's from him before I see the handwriting. The same careful script that wrote "I'm sorry" on a piece of paper I still keep tucked between the pages of my bedside book. The envelope is simple, cream-colored, with my name written in black ink. No return address, but I recognize the postmark from his town. I hold it for a long time before opening it, weighing the possibility that some words, once read, change everything again. Inside is a single sheet of paper, the message brief. I'm in therapy. Fiona knows. I don't know what's next, but thank you for showing me the mirror. No signature, but none is needed. I read it twice, then fold it carefully and carry it to my bookshelf. I slip it between the pages of an old novel. Something about love and loss and the choices we make when we think no one is watching. The letter doesn't tell me everything I want to know. Whether he's staying or leaving, whether his marriage can survive the truth, whether he thinks about that night in the cabin the way I do. But it tells me enough. He's stopped lying to himself. He's trying to become someone who can live with honesty instead of hiding from it. After dinner, I find myself standing in my living room, looking at the wall where this all began. The same wall I was leaning against months ago when his first message arrived, the one that asked what it feels like to be pinned. I walk over and place my palm flat against the cool surface, feeling the solid reality of it beneath my hand. For so long, I thought being pinned meant being trapped, held in place by circumstances or fear or the weight of things you couldn't control. But now I understand it differently. Sometimes being pinned means being held steady long enough to see yourself clearly, long enough to stop running from the truth of what you want. Desmond pinned me against the reality of my own heart, forced me to acknowledge feelings I'd spent 15 years carefully avoiding. And yes, it hurt. Love that real, that honest, always does. But it also freed something in me I didn't even know was caged. I think about the version of myself who received that first message, sitting on this same couch in the early morning light, afraid to answer a simple question. That man spent so much energy protecting himself from possibility that he forgot possibility could also mean joy. I'm still alone, and maybe I always will be. The geography of love doesn't always lead to the destinations we hope for. But I'm not empty anymore. I carry the weight of having been truly seen, truly wanted, truly chosen, even if only for a night in a rented cabin in the woods. My phone sits silent on the coffee table. No more loaded questions, no more carefully ambiguous messages. But I don't feel abandoned. This quiet feels different from the loneliness that came before. It feels like peace earned rather than imposed. Outside, the ocean stretches gray and restless toward the horizon, the same as always but somehow new. Tomorrow I'll teach my students about love in literature, about characters who risk everything for connection and those who choose safety over truth. I'll watch their young faces as they discover that the heart's geography is more complicated than any map, that want and have are different countries entirely. But tonight, I stand against this wall and finally understand what it means to be pinned. Not trapped, but held. Not diminished, but seen. Not broken by love, but remade by it. The house settles around me with its familiar creaks and sighs. Elliot appears at my feet, winding around my legs in the eternal feline ritual of claiming territory. I pick him up and carry him to the couch, where we settle into the comfortable quiet that has become our evening routine. I've survived wanting something I couldn't have. More than survived it. I've been changed by it, made more human by the experience of loving without guarantee, of choosing honesty over safety. And if Desmond ever finds his way back to questions that matter, if he ever needs to know again what it feels like to want, to be pinned, to choose truth over comfort, I'll be here. Not waiting, exactly, but present, ready to be seen and to see in return. Because that's what love is, in the end. Not the having, but the willingness to be known completely and to offer that same gift in return, whatever the cost.